Welcome, everybody, to breakout session number 5. My name is Amy. I'm going to be the moderator and hang out with you in the chat. But I want to welcome with you Dr. Rick Chromey. We saw him in our main stage session first thing this morning, and he shared with us how to remember our growls for the kids in our kids ministry. And just a little bit ago, he was in the discussion panel about relationships that last. And finally, he's going to be sharing with us in this breakout session on why kids really misbehave. And I know we want to lean in close and take good notes because he's going to share with us how to help these kids who may have some misbehavior in our classrooms. Thank you, Dr. Rick, for being here, and just take it away.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And I'm gonna share my screen because I'm gonna use slides with this one as well. So let me do that. And there we go. And I want to say welcome. Looks like we got almost 60 people in the room already, and that's great. Normally in a workshop like this, there's we have very limits, as far as how many people we can jam into a room, but it is good to have you here. And I want to say welcome again to this mighty KidMin conference. My name is Rick, and I'm from Boise, Idaho, and it's a blessing, a true blessing to be here. And for what it's worth, I would have been your worst nightmare as a kid. I don't have time to tell the story. I often do when this workshop's a little bit longer. But I've got 25 minutes. I'm going to get in and really scoot on it. But I got to tell you, the reason why I think God called me into ministry was to pay for my sins of what I caused my teachers when I was a little guy. I had a lot of hurt. Let me just put it this way. The reason why I was acting out was because I was hurt. I was also a small guy and I got picked on a lot. So there's a lot of bullying going on, and bullies like to be, people who are bullied often will find other people to bully. And I found people to bully. And, why kids really misbehave? Well, this was born out of a time in my life where I was really trying to understand my own kids, first of all. And then I started to even look at my own students and see that, oh, you know what? There's so much happening. And I'll tell you what, let's just get right to it, shall we? And let me give you a help at the very top here. There is a book that goes along with this session, and it's at mannasolutions.org. It is a $5 donation just to our ministry if you're interested in that. But it has everything. It really expands all this. I just want to let you know to be aware of that. You can check that out. And there's also a handout you can download for free that goes along with this particular session too. And you can check that out there at mannasolutions.org. Okay, enough of the shameless promotion. Let's get right to it. I want to talk just very quickly here about foundations, because before we can even get into it, we got to recognize that we have to have a philosophy that we operate out of when it comes to discipline. And here's the problem that we have in most classroom management models today. And if you're a public educator and you go take a class on classroom management, which is basically how to discipline in the classroom, whether it's Christian education or public education, whatever it might be, a lot of times what we're taught are reactive types of strategies. We wait until the child misbehaves, and then these are strategies to employ. This is how you deal with misbehaving kids. Well, that's okay. The problem is I think there's a better way, and that is to curb and really stop misbehavior before it even starts. So let me give you a metaphor here. And the metaphor is simply, do you want to be a fire extinguisher or do you want to be a smoke detector in your classroom management when you're working with kids? Or if you're a parent, do you want your home? Do you want to is it better to be a smoke detector or a fire extinguisher? I think the answer makes perfect sense, but maybe the jury is still out on this for you. Well, lean in on this one for a moment. A smoke detector, what does it do? It exactly what its name implies. It detects smoke. And a lot of times when a smoke detector goes off, there's really no fire, is there? There may be some heat. There may be a little bit of smoke. I know if I'm cooking in the kitchen, the smoke detector goes off quite a bit. I've been in hotels where the smoke detector went off and someone was cooking in another room and we all had to exit. It was precautions, but there was no fire, thank God. But I remember one time where the smoke detector went off. I was living in a little 14 by 70 mobile home, and the fire detector went off. And I looked down the hallway and saw that my son had actually stuffed some toast into the toaster, and the toast caught on fire, and there was a 3-foot flame coming out of the toaster. And at that point, I was thankful for a smoke detector, because I got down there and I immediately got that situation taken care of, because we could have lost the whole house. And in fact, it could have been a very tragic event in our family. But there are times when you need to use fire extinguishers too. And it's always when you have a fire. And that's where I want to challenge you on right now. Do you prefer to be a smoke detector? To be honest with you, that's actually a more pleasing way to teach, is to be able to sniff out the environment for misbehavior, curb it before it starts. Or do you want to constantly be going around, with a fire extinguisher, blowing out the fires, extinguishing the fires? It's your choice. You can either choose to be proactive or reactive in the classroom. And what I'm going to teach you is a proactive strategy, a proactive classroom management strategy for your children's ministry, for your youth ministry, or if you're in a Christian school or even public school teacher, this also works as well. So let's get right to it. Another thought here is scripturally. Let me just give you a thought from a biblical perspective. And, often we hear this phrase, spare the rod, right? Spare the rod. It comes from a passage of scripture, Proverbs 13:24, where it says, whoever spares the rod hates their children, but the one who loves their children is careful to discipline them. Now, what's interesting about a proverb, let me teach you a little bit about biblical exegesis, or how we interpret a Bible passage here, is that when you look at a proverb, it actually has a first part and a second part, and they mirror each other. So you look at the mirror here. Whoever spares the rod hates their children, but the one who loves their children, see the opposite. What do? They're careful to discipline them. And this is what's interesting about this. A rod, we often think of a rod as being a punishing tool, don't we? It's spanking, it's punishment. But in a shepherd's culture, it was actually a guide and a guard, far more often than it was a reactive punishing tool. In fact, in the book of Proverbs, it says the only time you actually beat the sheep or beat the child is when their life is in danger, which puts a whole new spin on spanking. The idea of sparing the rod here is you've got to have fences around your sheep. And a shepherd's rod was like 10 feet long, and they would literally guide. It was a guide that would guide the sheep down the path on one side and the other. And it was a positive tool. It wasn't a punitive tool. It was to guard the sheep. It was to guide them again. And why I find that fascinating is because you start to find other scriptures that pop. When you start thinking about, are you telling me that the rod is actually a positive thing, that it doesn't hurt, it can be pleasing? Yeah, it actually can be. It can be. Now, we know some discipline is harsh, and it has to be to correct. But most discipline is before it even ever happens. You're disciplining the entire time. All right. Psalm 23 says it best. Your rod and your staff, what do? They comfort. They comfort. There's security. And that's remember the last thing in the growls was security. Our children want security. Our teens want security. So what I want you to do is think of discipleship as discipline. When we discipline in the classroom, when we discipline in the home, we're actually discipling, we're guiding and guarding. And secondly, discipline is a guide. It is a guard. And that's what the rod is actually like. And I'd love to unpack that a little bit more, but I'm going to get back into the heart of why you're here to learn. All right. So let's talk about why kids misbehave, and let's get practical here. These are all smoke detector things, okay, strategies. Because what we're going to do is we're going to flip the script here. Instead of looking at how to respond to misbehavior, I'm going to show you why they misbehave. And at that point, you can go, oh, now I can actually predict when misbehavior might happen. So let's look at the first one. The first reason why children misbehave is belonging issues. They're not fitting in. They're not feeling like they belong. Back in the 1950s, there was a psychologist, a sociologist, who wrote a lot on child discipline and behavior. The man's name was Rudolf Dreikurs. Most people have never heard of Rudolf Dreikurs. I ran into him in a classroom management course I was taking in grad school, and it was like, whoa, why have I never heard of this guy? It was one of those things that what he said was really resonating, and I want to share it with you right now, because what Dreikurs said, I think, is absolutely true, but maybe you need to be convinced on it. Here's what Dreikurs theorized about the human relationship. He said the genuine goal of every human being is belonging. We all long to belong. We want to fit in. We want to be a part. And what he theorized was when you don't feel like you're fitting in, that's when you pursue what he called mistaken goals. Mistaken goals. You then jump the track, you might say, and you then start to go through progressively worse steps into towards misbehavior. And at each point, we as the teacher or parent or leader, we have a responsibility, I would suggest, to get them back to belonging. But if we're not careful, we just push them further down the road. Let me unpack that for you, because the first level was what Dreikurs called attention seeking. These are just flags that students wave or children wave to get our attention. And here's the thing about these flags. They are so innocuous. They're so innocent that a lot of times we ignore them. In fact, if you go to most teaching schools today, they will tell you that a lot of misbehavior, just ignore it. It's just innocent kids acting up. Let me tell you, Dreikurs would say the opposite. And I would suggest to you the opposite. Your smoke detector should be going beep, 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 beep. Okay. There are kids out there that when they start to misbehave, when they start to smolder a little bit, they're basically saying, I'm not fitting in, teach. I'm not feeling like I belong right now. And so they maybe tell a joke, or they maybe interrupt a little, or maybe they punch somebody next to them, or they just do something, and you're just, oh, well, they're just kids being kids. Just ignore it. Don't ignore it. Because by ignoring it, what you do is you push them to the next level. This is when their attention seeking becomes power plays. Really, they're going to do the same things, but now what they're doing gets on your nerves. They start really getting your goat. And now you start to notice, and you start to then do what a lot of teachers do, a lot of parents do at this point, is we power play back. And one of the most famous power plays, by the way, in the classroom and out in the home, is timeout. Let me suggest to you a radical new idea. Timeout is one of the worst strategies when it comes to getting kids to feel like they fit in. I mean, if a child is not feeling the love, if they're not feeling like they're fitting in and belonging in the situation, how does separating them from their peers solve the answer? It may push them to the side. It may push them away from the moment. It may temper it a little bit. But in reality, that separation does not stop the true problem. The problem is they want to belong. The goal that they have, the goal that you have it right now. It's one of the problems in these types of workshops. And I love the fact that this is really short, is because we can, in a normal workshop, I have all sorts of times where you can connect and talk with each other as you work through these. But it's about building relationships, right? But you've been building relationships in other places here. And I love that part of this particular conference. Well, here's what Dreikurs said. If what we do is we time out and we use strategies that we use our own power plays against them, what we do is we drive them to the next level. And this is where kids now start to seek revenge. Now they act up and act out to intentionally hurt you as a teacher, to intentionally hurt you as a children's leader, to intentionally hurt you as a youth leader. I see it all the time. You know, when a child says to a parent, I hate you, that's a speaking out of revenge. You know, I knew of a child, actually not a child anymore. She's 25, 26 years old, but she literally moved out on her 18th birthday. On her birthday, they were having a birthday party for her, and she came out of her room with her bags packed and said, I'm out of here. And all the way through, you could see these things in that particular home, how the parents managed her, how they dealt with her, how they disciplined her was beat with the rod. They thought if they spanked her enough, she would eventually comply. They thought that they incentivized her with bribery and stuff like that, eventually she'd comply. None of that worked. All she wanted was to fit in. And if you looked at that family dynamic, it was wildly evident that the parents had their own agenda. They weren't, sometimes you wonder why in this case, they even had kids. It was not part of their priorities in their family was to have kids. And this daughter, she walked out. That's the ultimate act. In the classroom, what happens is it's usually at this point, what teachers do is we just power play back again. We put them in more timeouts. We up the ante. As a child myself, I would be forced to go up. Maybe some of you remember these type of strategies. The teacher drew a little chalk circle on the chalkboard, and I had to put my nose in that chalk circle while my peers were laughing at me. That's how I was disciplined in grade school. It was no wonder I was jaded. No wonder that, I didn't like school, at least early on. Revenge. There's not enough revenge that a child can take against a teacher or a leader. You will always win. You will always have a bigger power play. And then what happens is there's resignation. And Dreiker said this is actually the worst stage of all. But we as adults, we think, oh, we've won. We've won. We've actually caused them they're now complying. All they've done is quit. All they've done is given up. They're being compliant, all right, but they've already checked out in their mind and in their heart. And the first chance they get to permanently leave, like that daughter I was just talking about, they will. And it all goes back to the very beginning when there was just a little bit of smoke of attention seeking and it was ignored. I love this model. I love what he's saying. And as I started to learn how to be a smoke detector in my own classrooms and in my own children's ministries and my own youth ministries, in my own home, I started to realize, whoa, I can actually, kind of predict, there are times when I know that the kids are going to, not feel like they're fitting in. A classic example is the first day of class, the first week of class. I was a Bible college professor, Christian college professor for 15 years. And I could predict almost within 90% accuracy, the students that would drop out at semester. My solution or my insight was actually fairly common sense. I just went to the cafeteria and looked who was sitting alone. You show me a student who was sitting alone after 2 weeks, they had no friends, they had no relationships. You could predict with 90% certainty that they wouldn't be there by the end of the semester. This stuff is real. Why kids really misbehave? 80% of the misbehavior I see in children's ministry as well as youth ministry is belonging issues. They're not feeling the love. That's why relationship is it's so important. That's why the growls, at the heart of it is relationship. Well, I don't want to let my time get too much away from me. I've got about 7 minutes left, but let me give you just one more here. The other two. The second one is boredom. And this really plays out with the little ones, the preschoolers in particular. But you see it in children's ministry. They're bored. They're absolutely bored. And boredom is a major reason for misbehavior because of what's called the attention span. And your attention span is actually wired to your age. If you're 2 years old, you have a 2-minute attention span. If you're 5 years old, you have a 5-minute attention span. If you're 10 years old, you have a 10-minute attention span. If you're 16 years old, you have a 2-minute attention span. Actually, scratch that. You probably have a 4-minute attention span, wired by the social media, the micromedia that now floods our adolescents' lives. Social media like TikTok and Snapchat and Twitter and even the YouTube video. The average YouTube video that an adolescent watches is under 4 minutes. Their attention spans are so short, which means as teachers, we got to keep mixing it up. As youth leaders and in the curriculum, we got to keep things moving. We have to have a good pace. One of the things, that's why I use visuals. I realize I'm a little small box here for you, but the point is you've been sitting all day listening to people, and I want to walk you through this and give you the visuals. And part of that is to snap you back to attention, because predictability is the first step towards boredom. When you become predictable, When the mind becomes predictable and they go, oh, this is what's happening next, you start to shut down, you start to bore. And there's so much more I could share on this. But if you want to see this one in action, just go down to your local Walmart or a department store. But a Walmart's a good place where you can, or a grocery store where a parent has taken a child and put him in a grocery cart, and now is going to spend the next 2 hours shopping with a child and wonders why that child is acting up. Really? Or it's going to explain to the father who is who just drives out of the driveway, and they're going to make a long 15-hour drive to grandma and grandpa's, and they're not 15 minutes down the road, and the kid's safe in the back seat. Are we there yet? Yeah. What's going on? They're already bored. And it's amazing, the millennial generation, the kids in the last 20 years, they had all sorts of videos, and we did everything we could to keep them from being bored. It's common. It's a very common type of misbehavior. And it accounts for about 15%. Belonging issues, but when you get down into preschoolers, a lot of it can be boredom. There's a lot bigger, probably 50, 60% could actually be boredom more than belonging. But there's one more I want to share with you. It's not just belonging, it's not just boredom, it's also beliefs. This especially starts to manifest within preteens. By the time you get to be preteen, you start to see certain things about your peers. You start to compare yourself to your peers. Did you not? I mean, we all knew by the time we were in 5th grade who the valedictorian was going to be. We all knew who the homecoming queen was going to be. We knew who the football star was going to be. And we also knew that we probably weren't going to be that person. I knew that anyway, and then we start listening to these adults who keep pouring into our lives, and they keep giving us these beliefs, these ideas about ourselves. Why can't you be as good as your sister? Or you're never going to be as smart as John there. Teachers do it. Children's ministry leaders. I've seen it, especially in children's ministry on promotion Sunday. New crop of kids come in, and here's little Johnny. Johnny, who's, he's not exactly the best kid, but the teacher, the first thing she says to him, oh yeah, you're Johnny. I've heard about you. And then we wonder why the kid acts up. We just lowered the bar for the boy. I know, because I was that type of kid again. I love what Proverbs says on this. As water reflects a face, so a man's heart reflects the man. Our beliefs. So let me leave you with again some practical thoughts on this. And there was a woman who wrote on this. She has a great book, Barbara Colarosa. She had a book that came out called Kids Are Worth It, and this is probably back in the 90s, so it's a little bit old. But what she left us is not old. This stuff sings. So what she suggested is that every single day a child should hear 6 statements that really are spoken into their life. And if you can just learn these statements, and I memorized them, in fact, and I use them all the time with children. I use them all the time with teens. I've used them with my own children. Here's what they are. First of all, I believe in you. Do you know how many children today don't know of an adult who believes in them? It's more than just, I believe you. I mean, that might go without saying. It's, I believe in you. Secondly, I trust you. I trust you. Now, some children have acted up and acted out so much that we don't trust them. But what we have to do is find those little small areas where we can trust them and start rebuilding that trust. Third, I know you can handle this. I've said this one a lot to children over the years, especially the little ones. Hey, I know you can handle this. Preschoolers, they really think they can do it all, can't they? I can do this. Let me do this. I want to do this. But somewhere along the line, you get to be high school age again, and it's like, I can't do this. Poor me. Woe is me. And, these beliefs are, well, as teachers, we need to know, as leaders, we need to know that they can do it and how they can do it. And just, sometimes we have to push them to do it, but, knowing that about them. Fourth, you are listened to. You're listened to. I care about you, and I'm going to listen to you. And, I'm going to listen long to you. I want to hear what's going on in your life. And then you're cared for. I care about you. I care about who you are. I care about you as a person. As a child of God, I care about you. And you are important to me. You are important to me is the last one. Do you realize if we didn't have any children, we wouldn't have children's ministry? There'd be no need for you. If we didn't have kids, there would be no reason to have kids ministry. You know, Barbara Colarosa sums it up this way. She says, if kids come to us from strong, healthy, functioning families, it makes our job easier. If they do not come to us from strong, healthy, functioning families, it makes our job more important. And that, my friends, are the three reasons why kids misbehave: belonging, boredom, beliefs. Learn them, love them, live them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick. That was really wonderful. This session went by so fast, but you
Yeah, it
really
does.
gave us some good ideas to look deeper than just the behavior that we see, to look deeper behind what's the child thinking, what's the child feeling, and then giving us some statements to pour into them so that we can help them feel like they belong and to feel a part and have relationships with them. So thank you so much. Thank you for being a part of this breakout session with us, but thank you being a part of our day. You've been in helping us out all day long and pouring into us all day long, and I know that it's going to bear fruit.